Welcome to the deep dive. We're on a mission today. A big one, you could say.
Absolutely.
How can we genuinely, you know, rev up Europe?
Yeah.
Not just talk, but find real actions to boost competitiveness, spark innovation, fuel growth.
And ultimately make people happier, more optimistic. That's key.
That's the goal. Think of this as our blueprint session. We're really digging into what makes economies tick and how Europe can get that extra spring in its step.
And we're looking at it from all sides, right?
Yeah.
The EU level, what individual countries can do, businesses,
Yeah.
and crucially, how it all affects European citizens, their lives, their outlook.
Exactly. And look, this isn't just us brainstorming. We've got some solid research backing us up. We've been digging into an economics working paper from January 2025. It focuses on growth, competitiveness, especially in Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe.
And it's a serious collaboration.
Yeah.
The Austrian National Bank, the Vienna Institute for Economic Studies, the European Investment Bank. These folks know their stuff.
They really do. What's interesting is their focus on innovation as the real engine here. It's not just about being cheaper anymore.
No, it's about being smarter, developing tech, fostering that ingenuity.
So the big question, drawing right from their analysis, is how does Europe reignite that economic spark? How do we build a future where people genuinely feel things are improving?
Okay, let's jump in. Starting at the top, the EU level.
Right. One big thing the paper flags is this sense that the EU's economic growth, well, it hasn't quite kept pace with the US or China.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
And a major reason seems to be lower productivity.
Lower productivity. And the paper hints maybe that Europe sort of missed the boat a bit on the IT revolution.
That's one interpretation floated. Like, we didn't quite grab those opportunities as quickly or fully. A bit like having slower broadband when it really mattered.
Huh. Yeah, good analogy. And then if we look specifically at Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe, the CESEE region.
The story gets more complex there.
How so?
Well, initially, after joining the EU, these countries were catching up fast. Great convergence story.
Which is exactly what you want to see.
But the paper says that momentum has slowed recently.
Okay. Why?
A few things. Less foreign direct investment, FDI, flowing in. Labor costs are rising. And crucially, skills shortages are becoming a real problem.
Right. And that leads to this risk. What do they call it? The middle income trap.
Exactly. You get stuck. You manage to grow to a certain point, but breaking through to that top tier of advanced economies becomes really difficult, like hitting a plateau just below the summit.
So what's the paper's answer to getting off that plateau?
The core argument really is a big shift, moving towards an economy driven by knowledge and technology. That's crucial for CEC.
Makes sense. Move up the value chain.
And the data backs it up. Sectors heavy on R&D, think manufacturing, high-end technical services, ICT, they've been the big GDP growth drivers in the last decade.
Those are the turbo boosters then.
Pretty much. And this points to something the EU as a whole needs to do. Create this broad, supportive environment.
What does that look like?
Policies that really help competitiveness, growth, well-being. So embodying the business environment, upgrading infrastructure.
Roads, internet, energy grids. The basics, but better.
Absolutely. And making EU capital markets work better together, smoother, channeling funds towards innovation. A well-oiled machine.
The paper also talks about EU innovation policies tackling something called path dependency. What's that about?
Ah, right. It's basically the idea that where you've come from makes it harder to change direction.
So if a region relied on low-value industries...
It's hard to suddenly become an innovation hub. You're kind of stuck on that path.
Okay, so you can't just flip a switch.
Definitely not. The paper stresses it needs a coordinated push, simultaneous investments.
In what?
Skills for the workforce, access to finance, and having those specialized innovative firms actually present and growing.
Like planting a garden soil, seeds, water, all together.
That's a good way to think about it.
And EU funding seems quite important here, doesn't it? Things like Horizon, structural funds.
Oh, very important, especially for domestic R&D in CC countries. They're major funding sources, kind of like the fertilizer for that garden.
Right.
And the paper specifically mentions the European Investment Bank Group, a major public supporter of innovation, not just with money, but advice too.
And they're particularly active in CC for innovation.
It seems so, relatively speaking. When you compare their innovation support to total R&D spending, their role looks even more significant in CC than elsewhere in the EU. It suggests a targeted effort, which makes sense.
Okay, let's zoom in now. Individual member countries. The paper's clear. No single recipe fits everyone in CC.
Absolutely not. The country dashboards they include really show the disparities. Big differences in innovation capacity and outcomes.
Like a class photo, everyone's different.
Exactly. And innovation is often concentrated. Specific sectors like vehicles, pharma, ICT.
And specific places.
Yeah, often around capital cities or regions with strong universities. The data also suggests that generally fewer firms in CESEE are actively innovating compared to the north and west of the EU.
And even among those that are innovating, the intensity varies.
Right. A higher share of CESEE firms seem to allocate very little, sometimes almost nothing, to R&D and digitalization compared to firms in the north, west, or the U.S.
Just dipping their toes in, maybe?
Perhaps. And one of the biggest roadblocks identified for these countries is that skills shortage we mentioned.
The brain drain issue.
That's part of it, but it's also linked to lower public R&D spending historically. Maybe not enough focus on lifelong learning.
And people leaving, yeah. The paper even forecasts the working age population shrinking in CESEE.
It does. While it's expected to be more stable in the north and west, that's a huge challenge, losing talent.
So what levers can individual countries pull? What can they actually do?
Well, the paper lays out several policy directions. Education is key.
STEM field.
Encourage STEM, definitely, especially getting more women involved. Also, boost research quality through proper evaluation. Invest in training for university staff.
Makes sense. What else?
Be open to skilled immigration. And not just open the door, but help people integrate language support, other services.
So attract talent from outside, too.
And keep the talent you have.
Yeah.
Enhance quality of life culture, healthcare, transport. Make it a place people want to live and work.
And cut red tape. Make things easier for business.
Yes. Streamline bureaucracy.
Yeah.
More funding for university business collaboration is another one. Help research get out of the lab.
And funding for startups. Venture capital.
Support risk finance markets, yes. Maybe through development banks, maybe better EU capital market integration helps there too.
So each country needs to look at its own dashboard, basically, and see where the gaps are: business environment, education spending, VC access.
Precisely. Tailor the strategy based on the specific weaknesses and strengths.
Okay, let's pivot to businesses. Companies based in Europe, especially in CEC, what's their role? The paper says they are hiring more R&D people, investing in IP.
Yes, there's been an increase over the last decade, which is positive. Building that innovation muscle, as you said earlier.
And foreign-owned firms play a big part.
A very big part in CEC economies. Value-added, jobs, especially in manufacturing, finance, ICT. They often bring higher productivity.
Why is that? New investment, better tech.
Often linked to greenfield investments, building new facilities and using more advanced tech, more digitalization. They bring know-how.
But there's a but, isn't there? Their own R&D spending within the region might be lower than expected.
That's a nuance the paper points out, yeah. When you control for firm size and sector, their direct R&D investment might not be as high. They bring tech, but maybe do the core research elsewhere.
So technology transfer happens.
It can, absolutely. CEC firms learn by adopting existing tech and practices from FDI.
But it doesn't always spread easily.
The paper suggests new tech diffuses more slowly to less productive firms in the region. Maybe because there are more small firms, maybe financing issues.
And the knock-on effects, the spillovers to local firms,
might be limited, or even negative in some cases, according to the research, which is why they suggest focusing on attracting those new greenfield investments.
Interesting. On the plus side, foreign firms are doing more product testing and development in CEC.
Yes, that seems to be increasing. Lower costs play a role, but also growing trust in the local workforce's skills. It's becoming a location for refining products.
Good news for the region. And what about local, domestically owned firms? Are they innovating?
They are. They're boosting R&D too. And the paper finds their R&D investments are actually similarly productive to those of foreign firms.
Really? That's encouraging.
It is. Though the impact on overall profitability might be slightly less for domestic firms, but the potential is there.
What's holding them back? Still funding.
Financial constraints are a challenge for both domestic and foreign firms doing R&D, though maybe less so for the big foreign players. Consistent funding is always tough for innovation.
And university business collaboration. We mentioned it for countries, but what about from the business side?
Huge potential there. But success depends on enough funding and having shared goals. Bureaucracy and funding gaps are often the hurdles.
Okay. And venture capital. Still small, but growing.
Growing, yes, but from a low base in most CESEE countries. Estonia and Poland are doing better. But you have that chicken and egg problem.
Not enough successful startups to attract VC, not enough VC to create more successful startups.
Exactly. Plus, a shorter history of successful exits for investors and the smaller size of the individual markets. It's challenging.
Right. Let's bring it home to the citizens, the people of Europe. All this economic stuff, competitiveness, innovation, it's ultimately about them, right? Happiness, optimism.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Better living standards, more opportunities, that's the point.
And a big issue impacting citizens directly, especially in CCAs, is this brain drain.
Yeah. Younger, educated people leaving for what they see as better prospects elsewhere in the EU. Pay, stability, lifestyle.
It's understandable. But what about those who come back?
They often bring back fantastic skills, valuable networks. But the paper hints they might not always find the right jobs back home to fully use that potential.
So we need to tackle why people leave in the first place.
Yes. Address the root causes. Wage gaps matter, of course.
Yeah.
But also perceptions about the political situation, the social environment.
It's the whole picture.
Exactly. Investing in education, infrastructure, overall quality of life that fosters optimism. It encourages people to stay or to return and contribute.
And making sure there are actually good opportunities for those returnees with their new skills.
Crucial. You need the right environment for them to plug back into and thrive.
So it really feels like everything's connected. A thriving innovation ecosystem needs collaboration, investment in people, support at all levels, EU, national, business.
Right down to the individual citizen feeling optimistic about their future. It's all intertwined. Progress in one area helps others.
It really is a complex web.
It is. No single magic bullet.
Okay, final thought then. Let's go big picture again. Considering everything we've discussed, the strengths, the challenges across Europe, if you had to pick one thing, the single most impactful action we could take today.
Ooh, tough one.
To really kickstart that Make Europe Great Again idea, but in a way that genuinely benefits everyone, all citizens, what would it be? Something for you, listening, to really chew on.
That's a powerful question to end on. Really gets to the heart of it. Requires ongoing thought, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Europe's future.